Hello everyone, today we're going to cover the show Samurai Jack from the beginning to end in detail. So sit back, relax, and let's jump right in. Samurai Jack follows the epic journey of a time-displaced samurai tasked with defeating the shape-shifting demon known as Aku and finding a way back to his own era. Armed with a sword and an indomitable spirit, Jack faces countless challenges while embodying the code of the warrior, seeking redemption and, ultimately, a chance to return home. In a bleak wasteland where the sun's covered by a solar eclipse, an ancient evil awakens. The evil is named Aku, the villain of this show who used to spread chaos and destruction all around. Nearby, an emperor shares the story with his son of his battle against the demon who was immune to mortal weapons. Determined to save his land, he rode atop a mountain peak seeking 3 monks with mystical powers. The monks forged him an enchanted blade, a legendary weapon that could actually hurt the wicked Aku. Armed with this weapon and blessed by the monks, the emperor went all in and faced off against Aku. It was a brutal fight, but he managed to trap the demon right back into the very wasteland he had created. After getting rid of Aku, the emperor rebuilt his land, praying that he'd never have to deal with that monster again. And that's when he dropped some wisdom on his son, warning him to always stay on guard in case Aku ever came back.
Always be alert, my son.
To his dismay, the monstrous Aku made a comeback, fueled by revenge. As the forces struggled to hold him off with feeble mortal weapons, the emperor rushed to retrieve his magical sword. Sadly, he was captured, but in his final moments, he urged his wife to proceed with their prepared plan. The woman takes the boy and sends him across the world to train for 17 years under the world's finest warriors, preparing him to undo Aku's damage. During his voyage, he studies astrology under the ship's captain. In the Middle East, he masters horse riding, and in Africa, he hones his skills in stick fighting. Journeying to Egypt, he learns to decipher hieroglyphics before heading to Greece to acquire grappling techniques. In Europe, he crosses paths with Robin Hood, who instructs him in archery. Along the way, he becomes adept at sailing, axe throwing, and spear throwing. Finally, he concludes his training in Shaolin Temple, mastering the art of Kung Fu. After 17 long years, he reunites with his mother at a snowy temple, where she presents him with a white gi and his father's blade. Now fully prepared, the boy sets out to confront his archenemy. Filled with an unwavering determination, he returns to his homeland, only to discover his people enslaved and subjected to inhumane treatment in mines. Among them, he finds his frail and aged father. He triumphs over the guards, freeing his father who alerts him to Aku's treachery. Determined, he journeys to Aku's tower, encountering various manifestations of the shape-shifting villain. None prove a match for the boy as he defeats them one by one. Just as he's about to deliver the decisive blow though, Aku, in a desperate move, opens a portal through time and hurls Jack into a distant future. Before we head into the story, I want to tell you more about Aku's origin and how the Emperor managed to defeat him. At the dawn of time, the universe was filled with a void, just an endless space waiting for something to happen. Then, boom, there was this massive explosion that created the whole universe, along with this humongous evil black mass called the Ultimate Evil. This Ultimate Evil wanted to chomp down on the fresh universe, but 3 godly figures stepped up and said, "Not today, buddy." The gods, Odin, Ra, and Rama, waged a fierce battle against the Ultimate Evil. Though they successfully defeated it with their divine weapons, a small fragment of the Dark Force survived, finding refuge on good old planet Earth. It landed in Japan, which caused a huge explosion, resulting in the death of all dinosaurs. The black mass grew into a giant pool of tar, absorbing their bodies and growing all over the place in this weird, bushy, spiky shape. Centuries passed, and the Earth gave birth to its most complex species, the humans. Away from the black mass's gluttony, humans settled in civilizations. Fast forward to when Japan's monarchy was all set up, the black mass found a way closer to civilization. The Emperor of the Imperial Palace saw the situation and decided to take down this threat from the source. His pregnant wife begged him not to go, but he was like, "Babe, I love you, but if I don't do something, the whole land's gonna bite the dust." The man's got a point. So, the Emperor got his hands on a magical poison elixir, thinking it was the key to finally ending the madness. He rounded up a team of elite cavalry and rode straight out into the heart of the forest. The forest seemed to awaken, spikes bursting forth from the ground, taking down every one of the Emperor's men. Undeterred though, he persisted, pushing forward resolutely towards the center of the forest. Once he reached the center, the Emperor took an arrow, dipped it in the poison, and took aim at the core of the black mass. But guess what? Instead of destroying the plague, it did something wild. It gave the plague a physical form. And that form is none other than Aku, the infamous shape-shifting demon we all know. The Emperor tried to go all out with his mortal weapons, but let's face it, they were no match for Aku's powers. Aku conjured up a massive tree, trapping the Emperor against its trunk, and then proceeded to unleash chaos on the palace, making sure the Emperor watched every bit of destruction. While Aku went wild wrecking the Emperor's kingdom, the Emperor was stuck, unable to do anything. But to his luck, Odin's horse, Sleipnir, arrived to the rescue. Sleipnir whisked him away to a high mountain where resided Ra, Vishnu, and Odin. They spilled the beans on what Aku really is, and then took the pure spirit right out of the Emperor. But don't worry, they're cool gods, so they turned it into a mystical enchanted sword. All decked out in shiny silver armor and wielding his enchanted sword, the Emperor was ready to kick some Aku butt. Riding on a mystical cloud, he charged back into battle, swinging the sword that actually hurt Aku, who was all confused since no mortal weapon could touch him before. The Emperor told him about the sword's origin, and Aku tried to make a run for it because he knew he was in deep trouble. The Emperor followed and thrust the sword into him, trapping Aku inside the weapon. He then shoved the sword into the ground as Aku turned into a big craggy tree while swearing to return one day for revenge. The Emperor then went back to his wife after hearing a baby cry and held his newborn son. He then told his wife that they must have a plan in case Aku ever returns. And guess what? He actually did return, almost 8 years since the Emperor put him into the ground. So this is the backstory behind Aku's birth and his return. So now let's address the events of the show that happen after Jack is sent to the distant future. Jack finds himself transported to this crazy futuristic world with towering buildings, flying cars, and all sorts of deadly gizmos. Talk about a major culture shock. After getting almost killed, he stumbles across 3 extraterrestrial locals who give him his name, Jack.
Yo, Jack, that was some awesome show!
And given how he's carrying a sword and wearing a gi, he's often addressed as Samurai Jack, which is not his real name, by the way. It's something that he picked up along the way, and God knows what his real name is.
We never got your name.
He also learns that in the future, Aku has completely taken over the world and uses his powers to further expand his evil schemes. Feeling bummed out by Aku's face plastered all over the place, Jack decides to do what any normal guy would do to unwind. He heads to the nearest bar. But guess what? The locals there have a funny way of welcoming him. They try to kill him. Talk about a warm reception. Once that whole crazy party is over, Jack gets approached by 3 talking archaeologist dogs. Their kind is forced by Aku to dig up precious gems, and they ask Jack for help. Being the determined guy he is, Jack agrees because he knows it'll get him closer to Aku.
Even dogs should not be forced to live like dogs.
As they set off to the dig site, one of Aku's spies, who was eavesdropping on them, informs him about Jack's arrival. Infuriated, Aku sends an army of deadly insect robots to handle the situation. Jack and the dogs learn about the incoming attack, and in an epic sequence of events, Jack prepares defenses. However, once all of the defenses fall, he has to fight the killer robots on foot. What follows is the most epic fighting sequence that I've ever seen. Afterwards, he roams around looking for food and comes across beings known as Crycholites, who are after a berserk creature known as the Woolly. They invite Jack to their settlement for a feast, where he learns that Woolies are peaceful beings put into slavery by these little devils. He helps them liberate their land, and in return, their elder tells Jack to travel north where he may find a way back home. Jack takes his advice and goes to Arab, where a fortune teller tells him to seek a jewel that possesses the power to send him back home. Along his journey, he encounters a woman named Ikra who seeks the same jewel to free her father from Aku's grasp. The two travel in the desert where they encounter several monsters and save each other multiple times. As a result, the two start bonding until they finally reach the jewel. There, Ikra destroys it and reveals herself to be Aku, the shapeshifter. Having his hopes shattered, Jack goes all over the world to find a way back home. Jack then visits a city under the ocean, fights a lava monster inside a volcano, and even travels to space. But sadly, all of his efforts are dusted by the evil schemes of Aku. Eventually, he stumbles across a bridge that extends as far as the eye can see, and after venturing on it for days, runs into a Scotsman who happens to be crossing the bridge from the other side. The two fight for days over who gets to pass, since the bridge is only one person wide, until some bounty hunters knock them off and the two learn to fight as a team. They set their differences aside, and Jack makes a long-lasting friend. Sometime later, the Scotsman needs to save his wife, and Jack offers help. The two successfully rescue her from the Castle of Boone. Jack's quest for the time portal continues as he fights some zombies, a soul collector Demongo, becomes a chicken, and ends some kind of rave that has been brainwashing the kids. He even learns to jump good from white apes in exchange for showing them how to defend themselves. That episode is really funny, you should definitely watch it. Jack then travels to Egypt, where he confronts his most formidable adversaries yet, the followers of Set. Initially outmatched, Jack receives assistance from the sun god Ra, enabling him to defeat his fierce foes. Jack meets some traveling creatures who show him the way to a time portal, but when he gets to the portal, he's greeted by this big guardian who tells him he has to beat him to get through. Well, Jack can't beat him, not even close. Next thing you know, this red bat-like creature swoops in and carries Jack away. As he's whisked away, the time portal pictures Jack's future, which basically tells us that he has to endure much more if he wants to use this portal. After a while, Jack finds himself ambushed by a group of Shaolin monks who belong to the same temple where he trained. They bring him to meet their leader, who's seriously ancient and somehow stuck inside a tree. It turns out that this tree-bound elder is none other than his old friend Tan Zhang, the very same person he used to train with back in the temple. He guides him to a portal alongside two of his monks, but a situation arises where he has to choose between the portal or saving the monks. He chooses the latter and the portal closes, leaving Jack to find another way back home. Continuing forward, Jack fights a ninja, saves a city of robots, teaches a valuable lesson to a samurai from Walmart, and even catches a cold from Aku.
Oh, I don't feel good.
Having gone through so much, Jack loses his memories and starts working as a waiter under the name Brent. Luckily for him, the only friend he's made along the way finds him and helps him regain his senses, using, let's say, his methods were unorthodox.
It's the stench of the wily jub plant.
As Jack continues his adventure, he's on a mission to find another time portal. Now, here's where things get interesting. After Season 4 ended in 2004, we had to wait a whopping 13 years for another season. Can you believe that? But hey, the wait was totally worth it. Thanks to Adult Swim picking up the show, Season 5 became an absolute fan favorite. They gave it a serious polish, keeping the art style intact, but adding vibrant colors and leveling up the animation. It's a visual feast, trust me. Plus, the show takes a darker turn, with more gore and a major focus on action. It's a major level up, and you seriously need to watch Season 5 to fully appreciate its beauty. 50 years have passed since Jack arrived in the future, yet time doesn't seem to affect him. He doesn't age, but his suffering continues. Aku's grasp chokes the past, present, and future. Hope is lost. Several decades of Aku's reign gives rise to an all-woman cult that considers him their god. The women perform rituals and ceremonies in his honor and even build statues to please their god. Impressed by their devotion, he pours a portion himself into a cup, and upon drinking from it, the cult leader impregnates herself and gives birth to 7 daughters known as the Daughters of Aku. For several years, these daughters are raised solely for one purpose: to kill Jack, as he's the only opposing force to their god Aku. Jack, on the other hand, is mentally exhausted, seeing his own parents in hallucinations telling him that he betrayed them by not returning to the past. He's haunted by a samurai ghost who constantly tells him to end his own misery. But despite all that, Jack continues his quest and helps people along the way. On a side note, Jack accidentally drops his enchanted sword into a pit and now has no means to harm Aku. Scaramouche, a robot assassin sent to kill Jack, learns about this and tries to inform Aku, but Jack stops him and destroys his body. Believe it or not, Aku has hit rock bottom and is now attending therapy sessions. The once mighty evil is now battling depression. How the tables have turned. In 50 years of systematically destroying all the time portals, Aku hoped that old age would eventually catch up with our hero and do the job for him. But here's the kicker. The very portal that brought Jack to this timeline granted him immunity to aging. So while Jack isn't invincible or immortal, the effects of time simply don't affect him.
I just don't know if I can handle that.
It might seem like a blessing, but trust me, it's more of a curse in disguise. Jack finds himself in a life or death situation with nothing to defend himself and hides in an abandoned temple. Shortly after, he's ambushed by one of the daughters of Aku, whom he manages to kill, just barely. Jack may have killed thousands of monsters over the years, but this is the first time he ever took a human life. He's not so fond of the feeling that follows. Jack is gravely injured in the fight and loses a lot of blood, but his troubles are only getting started as he's yet to face the other 6 daughters of Aku. After some time, the daughters find Jack and gang up on him, and in a brutal, fierce battle, he manages to strike them down one by one. However, as he ventures forward, he learns that one of the daughters, named Ashi, has survived. But suddenly, both of them get swallowed by a giant snow monster. Inside, as Jack tries to explain the true nature of Aku, they get swarmed by some blue-green monsters. Ashi tries to kick Jack into them so he gets killed, but in the end, Jack ends up saving her life multiple times. Ultimately, the two manage to make it out of the monster, and Ashi, having a new perspective on life, begins to doubt everything she was taught. Meanwhile, the Scotsman, now an old man, leads his army of 100 daughters against Aku.
That goes for all of you.
Knowing they stand no chance though, he stays behind to buy his daughters time to escape. Sadly, he dies in the process, but his spirit lives on as a ghost thanks to the Celtic runes on his sword. United in their purpose, the Scotsman and his daughters vow to find Jack and carry on the fight against Aku. On the other hand, Jack takes Ashi on a tour of the city where she sees the evil Aku has spread. They head to a father labored by mind-controlled children and frees them. However, as they unplug the device that controlled them, all of the kids fall to the ground, appearing dead. In agony, Jack once again sees the ghost of the samurai and follows it outside the factory. Ashi soon learns that the children are all alive though and goes in search of Jack. On her journey, she encounters individuals from Jack's past, people whom he has aided or faced in battles. Their stories and experiences instill Ashi with a renewed sense of hope, convincing her that Jack truly has the power to make a positive impact on the world. Eventually, she finds Jack in a cemetery where the ghost samurai convinces him to commit the act of seppuku. Ashi intervenes and reminds him of all the people he's helped. She also tells him that the children are all alive, giving him enough strength to face the ghost samurai. When Ashi wonders what they should do next, Jack casually responds that it's finally time to
Find my sword.
The pair come to a mountain where Jack had lost his sword, only to learn that the sword left him instead of the other way around. Jack decides to meditate to look for the sword in the spiritual world and comes across the 3 gods, Odin, Ra, and Rama. They deem him worthy and forge a brand new, stronger katana, and he returns to the spirit world. In the meantime, Ashi was protecting his body from attackers, including an army of orcs and the High Priestess. With his appearance and confidence restored, Jack decides it's time to face Aku one last time. As the two face off, more bounty hunters find their way closer to Aku, Jack and Ashi fall in love and become a formidable duo. Oh, and by the way, remember the robot assassin Scaramouche? Well, he crawls his way to Aku's lair and informs him that Jack has lost his sword. Excited by this revelation, Aku restores Scaramouche's body and the two join forces to hunt down Jack. Meanwhile, Jack returns to the portal with the guardian who he was unable to beat. He returns there only to discover that Aku has left his marks there as well. Aku and the robot locate Jack and Ashi. Aku blows Scaramouche's head off. He then reveals that since Ashi was born out of his own essence, he has the power to control her. He uses Ashi as a puppet to fight against Jack, who surrenders his sword as he can't bring himself to kill the woman he loves. Aku restrains Jack and forces Ashi to deliver the killing blow while broadcasting the entire event. Witnessing this, all the people Jack has helped in the past rise up in rebellion and attack Aku's lair. Despite initial setbacks, the Scotsman and his daughters arrive, turning the tide of the battle. Meanwhile, Jack breaks free, but Ashi, still under Aku's control, confronts him. Jack professes his love, leading Ashi to break free from Aku's influence. She learns that she has the same powers as Aku and opens a time portal, allowing Jack and herself to finally return to the past together. In a bittersweet turn of events, Jack and Ashi return to the past, back to the moment Jack was sent into the future. Jack's increased strength allows him to easily defeat Aku, sealing him away in his sword and ending his reign of terror. Reunited with his family, Jack finds happiness and eventually marries Ashi. However, during their wedding ceremony, Ashi suddenly collapses. It's revealed that since Aku never existed in the future, Ashi, who was born of Aku's essence, cannot exist in the present. As Ashi fades away in his arms, Jack mourns her loss, but finds comfort in his memories. Alone in a flourishing forest, he reflects on his journey, knowing that he's brought hope to the world after slaying the evil that was Aku. So that'll be it from us. If you enjoyed the video, then leave a like and subscribe to our channel for similar content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.